Once again, my name is Oluwadamnala Shirambo, and we'll be talking about the essence of prototyping. Into knowing the essence or importance of prototyping, we first need to understand what prototyping is for those that are probably new to what it is. What is a prototype? A prototype is an early sample, model, or release of a product built to test a concept or process, or to act as a thing to be replicated or learned from. It's simply a model of a product that is created to test the real product. The most commonly used prototyping technique is called rapid prototyping, and as the word says, rapid, meaning it is fast. The rapid prototyping is an iterative process used to visualize what a website or an application will look like in order to get feedback and validation from users, stakeholders, developers, and designers. When used well, rapid prototyping is supposed to improve the quality of your designs because it will enhance communication between all the various parties, and it will reduce the risk of you building what nobody wants. One mistake we make when building a product is skipping this prototyping stage when designing. You put a lot of effort to design the product, then you think, oh, this is very great, this is very good. But when you release it to the users, it can't even solve their problem. Then it now becomes a stressful moment for you. Then you now have to go back to rebuilding the product, something that you could have avoided if you have created a prototype beforehand. Let me ask this question. As a designer, have you ever been in a meeting or probably you designed something and you're trying to show it to your client? And you're just trying so hard to describe how this page will move to this page, or this part will transition to this part. Or you just keep trying to use words, try to use your hands to just demonstrate, or sometimes if your whole body will follow the whole demonstration process. So just explain how the interaction with the app will be. Then you just look at their faces and all of them are confused. They don't even understand what you're talking about, and they're not even flowing. So this is where prototyping comes in. It helps a lot. So when you thoughtfully animate and create an interaction of your design, you'd have an amazing user experience, even when showing your clients or your team members the design of the product that you're working on. Prototyping is an excellent method to use when you're testing the following. Like, probably you want to test a new functionality that wants to be added to an app. You can just quickly prototype it with the previous app design and show the team members. Also, you can use prototyping when there is a change to the workflow of a particular website or a particular application. Probably, if, for instance, now if Figma should update something, or if they create a new workflow to, or probably how to add a frame, or how to export your files, you figure out that they try to create a prototype, like how that function will work, so that you guys will understand that flow, that new flow that they're trying to work with. Also, when a new technology is coming, prototyping is needed. For instance, these self-driving cars that you're seeing, you try to see, even though they've not created the car itself, but they built a prototype. They made a video. Some of them made a video. Some of them created this animation that shows a car like driving itself. Yes, that's prototyping. Also, when you're coming up with a new interface that people have not seen before, like when the Samsung foldable phone came out, even when Apple Watch came out, it wasn't existing before. Even before the product itself is out, they create a sort of prototype around it, how you'll be able to bend the phone, how you'll be able to use the watch and all that. So yes, these are the different ways like in which prototyping are needed. There are other examples as well. Just shows how prototyping is like very important. It involves like three processes that are repetitive, that are repeated as many times as needed. So you prototype, you review, and you refine. You prototype, you review it together with your teams, let people look at it, let them flow with it, let them test it and all that. If it meets their expectations, fine. If it doesn't, if they make corrections, you refine and all that. That's why it's very important that you don't fall in love with your prototype, because it can change at any time. Some of us, when we design something, we believe it's super great. We fall in love with the whole process. We fall in love with the whole prototyping, and we won't spend so much time in it. Something that's supposed to be rapid, we spend weeks on it, which should not be so. So yes, that's how prototyping process works. These three things are repeated as many times as needed. So you might ask, oh, what are the benefits of prototyping? Like, why should I even bother myself prototyping? Why don't I just design the screens and give it to my clients and let them figure out what they want to do with it and all that? So the thing is, prototyping your ideas before development allows you to involve all the necessary stakeholders in the process, so that they will be able to gather and give feedback, and they'll be able to contribute before you end up making the product. So it gives everybody in the team a single idea to work with. For instance, if as a designer I just design some mock-ups and I say, oh, developers, these are the screens, so you guys should figure out how one page will move to the other. And something as little as how an over button would work would definitely give them issues if you don't prototype it carefully. So if you carefully prototype your designs, you will understand that everybody is on the same page. You know what would come next when you do this. When you click on this button, this is how the transition will be. When you do this, this is what would happen here. Also, prototyping reduces the need for documentation. It reduces the need for documentation. So sometimes you tend to have a lot of documentation, user stories, a lot of that. But prototyping can save a lot of time and a lot of effort if you do it the right way. So, the benefit of prototyping. Prototyping helps save time and cost. So when you prototype your designs beautifully and you see how your customers interact with the designs, even before you've written one single line of code, if you carefully conduct user research using that prototype, you'll be able to figure out which part of your product has a poor experience, which part needs fixing, and when you fix that early, you tend to save a lot of time instead of they just jumping into coding the designs and you end up wasting so much time and money. Prototyping also improves and increases user involvement. For instance, when you create prototype, your customers give their feedback immediately. Also, your team members, they suggest the changes as fast as possible. So you'll be able to make changes. You keep everybody involved. So it helps you, and it makes sure that you don't end up with a disastrous result. It's a better understanding of the design intent. So it's not only about presenting a strong visualization of the designs, but it gives you a better understanding of the look and feel of the final products, and it helps the team to better understand like why they are designing, who they are designing for, what the problem they're trying to solve and how they're trying to accomplish. Helps with early feedback. As I said before, one of the most important aspects of building a product is to gather feedback. So prototyping, you can collect reviews at a very early stage of the product development process. Whether you're adding new features or whether you're redesigning some parts, yes, you get feedback as fast as possible. You get to define the goals to your team members, to the management, to the stakeholders. So now you might also be saying, wow, prototyping is really important then. Yes, it is. It also helps you to get enough validation before development. I'm emphasizing on it because a lot of us make this mistake. We just jump into coding and all that without even testing and making iterations using prototypes. This iterative process, it helps to be sure that what you are building is actually needed. Also, you can use prototyping and your prototypes. You can use it during user research and user testing. Because when you're building any product, your users are the supreme, they're the most important. So you need to identify the prospective users, and they need to fully go through this prototype as well. So the ultimate intent of creating a prototype is for user testing, and this helps. It tells you how usable and valuable your product is to the end user. So you might be wondering, the product, they've not built it now, so why would I? They've not built the product, they've not developed it, so why would I let users see the prototype of what we're trying to build? Well, you just need to gather a few. It's going to be a close group of users, right? In which you can gain inputs and insights before you actually go into building the product itself. So with this, you can be able to improve and address their pain points, and you know whether this product is needed or it's not, whether you should just stop it right there, whether you should change some methodologies and all that. Yes, so prototyping. In some teams, there are some teams I know of, and there are some clients I know of, they'll tell you not to even prototype. They'll just, when you're done designing the high fidelity, they just send it to the developers. And you get to, in those type of situations, they go back and forth, just trying to figure out how this user flow, how the interaction should work. Whereas if you had prototyped it, you would even see and feel the interactions yourself. So it helps everybody. The developers are happy, they know what comes next afterwards. The clients are happy, the users are happy. So yes, it's very important to always prototype. Also, when you have a team of developers, always try to tell them to go through your prototype. And sometimes I would even design and even prototype, but funny enough, the developers just keep coding and they won't even go through They won't even present the prototype. Then they will now come back asking me questions that, oh, when they do this, what should happen next and all that. I'm like, have you guys, did you like present the prototype at all? Then they will now be like, oh, no, I did not. Then they go back to it and present it. Then they fully understand even all the things they've been racking their head about. They fully understand everything. So when it comes to design, it's very important not to leave your prototyping out. Yourself, now I know how important prototyping is. So how do I like prototype? How do I know how to do this and that? Yes, prototyping comes in many forms. Sometimes it's just a rough sketch on paper that is moved into an interactive simulation that looks like the final product. So there are like various ways to prototype. There are various tools to use. There are various levels of detail that can be used. That can be used when you want to prototype. It all depends on where you are or where you want to get to, like in your product. So when you're prototyping, a level of fidelity is very important. You need to understand what level of fidelity are you at in the product design process stage. So you might be asking, what is fidelity? So fidelity refers to how closely a prototype matches the final product or solution. So you can choose from a lot of different options depending on the stage and the goal of the prototype. So now there are like several levels of detail that a prototype should have. Like, let me tell you, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to like prototyping. You just need to pick the right tool that works for you at that time of the process. So there is visual, there's visual, so there is like a visual part of prototyping. So when you're talking about the visuals, so it can be either sketched or styled. Let me give a further example. So sketch in the sense that, oh, you're using just your paper and pen, just sketching it out. Versus styled, when you have all the colors, when you have all the like different colors, buttons, everything, images in place. Have a level of prototype in terms of its functionality. Like, how functional is it? Is it static or is it interactive? Static in the sense that, oh, it's just like static, just moving from screen to screen, or interactive in such a way that, oh, videos are playing, buttons are dancing, like are moving, like it has more transitions than static. And also you can also determine what type of prototype you're using in terms of content. There's some prototyping you can do with Ipsen text, like text that are not real, that are not the real content you're trying to use. And there's some times where you have to use the real content. So prototyping has a different range. It ranges. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, what picture you're trying to give your audience, what functionality you want them to test, and all of that. So have the low fidelity. So this method uses like pencil and paper sketches to produce static prototypes with low visuals and content to allow you to quickly make changes. So yes, yeah, they use paper and pen to sketch out some stuff. If you see it, you'll be really amazed at how quickly like they get their feedback and they're able to like make their changes as fast as possible. The medium fidelity, where they use tools to like prototype to make prototypes in forms of wireframes and workflows. So this level of fidelity, it helps when you're trying to demonstrate a system's behavior to determine if the user's needs are being met and to evaluate the user experience. Then for your high fidelity prototypes can sometimes be so realistic that you even think it's the real product. So you have tools like InVision, Sketch, Figma, Adobe XD, Framer, Protopie, a lot more. Like, it allow even non-technical users, they would like see the prototype and they'll be like, wow, have you guys coded this thing already? And they'll be like, no, it's just a prototype that we're trying to use to test and all that. So yes, there is low fidelity, medium fidelity, and high fidelity. There's no one way of creating prototypes. Over the last few years, a number of great digital prototyping tools that can help with this have come on board, like the tools I mentioned before, InVision, Proto.io, Adobe XD. A lot of them, they all have prototyping functionalities in them. So sometimes everyone will be asking which prototyping tool is the best, but that's actually the wrong question. The correct question is, which prototyping tool is the best for my current objective, for what I'm actually trying to achieve? It's something you create with all the tools from your own creative toolbox. Use what's right for you and what's right for the project. But you now be asking again, like, but how do I know which tool to use? How far should I go with my prototype? Okay, there are ways to know all of this. So first, you need to ask yourself these 4 major questions when you're trying to like make a prototype. So ask yourself, are you building for mobile? Are you building for tablet? Are you building for desktop? Or what type of fidelity does your prototype actually need to be? How fast does it need to go? How much of the experience do you need to show? So these 4 major questions, once you have the answers to them, then you can now check out this article and know which tool would be best for you to make use of. Don't forget, prototypes exist for the sake of providing a concept, communicating an idea, or testing an approach. Therefore, it's important to get feedback whenever you showcase a prototype, or you show your prototype, or users test your prototype. So feedback can come from 3 separate sources. One is from your fellow designers or developers in your team. Another form of feedback is the one you should expect from the customer, like the client or the stakeholder. Then the third one is from your users. So when these 3 groups of people, once you take their feedback very seriously and you work closely with it, the best designs come from it. So the more closely you can work with your customers in this initial phase, and the more successful your design is going to match your customers' needs. If I conclude, always remember, don't fall in love with your prototype. It's very important, because if you fall in love with it, it will be hard for you to make changes and you'll be quite defensive when you're making corrections. So don't fall in love with your prototype. Don't prototype features that won't even be in the final product. Don't bother. And don't be a perfectionist. Don't be a perfectionist. The goal is actually rapid prototyping. So when it's not rapid, when it's not fast, when you're wasting so much time, you want it to be smooth, you want the transition to be super smooth and all of that, then you waste a lot of time, and you even, like, the main purpose for which the prototype is meant for is like defeated. Also, don't prototype everything. Don't prototype everything. Some of you prototype even to the smallest of icons. Like, sometimes it's needed depending on the product you're trying to build, but sometimes you just need to prototype the most relevant buttons or all of that the users are gonna click on. Typing is very crucial in every product design project. So when you do your prototyping right, it gives your team a shortcut to learning without building an actual product. They get to learn, they get to know what the product is all about, even before they now start building the actual product. It's going to conclude our session on the essence of prototyping. Now I'll open the floor for questions, for comments, and all of that.